Hello, you multi-mystic, mermaid, magic, mustached men. Okay, that's a malt mention. And thank you to Mark Johnson, DO6MK, for that contribution, which gets this video off to a flying start. It happens to be Ralphie Review 1017 Extras, and this happens to be a whisky review channel, and I'm providing you a little bit of extra content to help you in your whisky purchasing choices. And what I'm going to talk about in this extras is when's the right time to consider buying the product from a new distillery, because there's a lot of new distilleries appearing at the moment, and most of them are bringing out products without age statements, and we don't want to buy a bottle and invest the money, 40, 50, 60, 70 pounds or dollars or euros, and be disappointed with the experience. And what I'm going to mention to you in this video is that there's certain clues and evidences that we can pick up on to decide at which point we're going to start considering buying the production from a distillery. Obviously, one of the important factors is the price. If they're really overpricing, then we're really reluctant to buy because we have other options, we have choices. And secondly, when we buy, we don't want to jump in with enthusiasm and buy a whisky experience which is still very young. And in fact, our palates aren't ready for it. And then we end up disappointed because that doesn't help the producers. Because if your first association, your first experience with a particular brand is one of disappointment, particularly in relation to the price, it's going to effectively put you off buying any more product from that distillery, not just for 1 or 2 years, but maybe for 10 or more years, if you ever even think about buying anything from them at all. So this is something that, to a certain extent, the producers of whisky are aware of, but they said, to another certain extent, they're running businesses. They've basically got to try and balance it out and just play their cards as best they can. So this is where the online commentators and reviewers like myself can be quite useful, in that we will give you a provisional review of a particular brand and just give you either a thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs across. And rarely we're going to give you a thumbs down, because we, as reviewers, certainly myself, I don't want to deliberately buy a bad bottle to say bad things. I like to keep things more positive and focus on the good things, because that's just more positive and encouraging. Hence the reason that I have recently reviewed Ardnamurchan. So here's 3 whiskies that I've recently reviewed, which are young whiskies from young companies, but they're different. I've just reviewed the Altglen version, cask strength 61.1%. That's what it was. Yeah, that's what it was. Heavily peated Skye Distillery whisky, small distillery, and it's very young and feisty. In my opinion, it's a curiosity for the real peat heads, but if you're a general whisky drinker, you're just going to find this unready and a little bit harsh and off-putting. And therefore, I would say, if you're more experienced with whisky, if you're a real heavily peated whisky fan, sure, go ahead and buy this. And, pay your money, have the experience. Now you've got your point of reference, you can talk about it. And not only that, but as more bottlings come out over the following years, you've got a good idea of what you're going to be spending your money on, because you've already had your initial referential experience with your first bottling. And it's exactly the same situation with Ardnamurchan. Now, the difference between Ardnamurchan and Chorrowfake is quite a shy distillery. They do not connect with the social media people. They don't actually kind of have this outreach where they proactively solicit to interaction with the online whisky community compared to Ardnamurchan, who certainly do, and do it very successfully, for a simple reason. Ardnamurchan are not pushy. They're not shovey. They're not excessive marketing department dictating, here's a standard bottle of this, say nice things and we might give you some more. Or invite you to the ambassador's party. You know, that can get so condescending. With Ardnamurchan, there's more genuineness. And this follows through in the quality of what they're bottling, and the fact that they held off for a couple of years before bottling, and when they did put the whisky out, there was plenty of it at an accessible price. So it's not rocket science to establish your brand. And this is something that the Thompson brothers have really figured out, because they've got a lot of connects within the whisky industry, and they have been bottling as independent bottlers while their own whisky is maturing. So they get the money in by acting as independent bottlers, including producing their own in-house independent bottling of a blend of traditional Scotch whisky and a blend of blended malt blend whisky. This is a really good idea, so I'm going to ask you this. Take Thompson brothers, who are requiring good quality casks to put their maturing new make spirit in from the Dornoch distillery. Where are they getting these casks from? Well, if they happen to be bottling stock that they've bought for their independent bottlings and proprietary blend bottlings, which is not incorporating their own homemade spirit from their new distillery, they're left with a lot of fresh, emptied whisky casks. And what better to mature whisky in this day and age is a cask where you know damn well the quality of the previous content, because you've bottled it and sold it and people have bought it and raved about it. Thompson brothers are doing that, so is Ardnamurchan, because Ardnamurchan are connected to an independent bottling company called Adelphi. Right? So this is something that you don't generally hear talked about, and yet it's really quite significant. And what I'm talking about now is whisky forensics. Whisky forensics, as we gain more experience, we start to kind of examine with our magnifying glass, not so much the bottlings themselves, but the bottlers who produce the bottlings. And we find out that some distilleries are just shipping in generic casks that have been reworked because they're on a very tight budget and they're going to do the best they can with them. Some distilleries are operating that way, and I wish them luck. But they do not grab my attention, because ultimately, at the end of the day, a good whisky is the result of good casks, ultimately. When you've got new distilleries which have connections to independent bottlers, and Chorleywood have, because they're part of Mossburn. When you see an independent bottling called Mossburn, that business, an independent bottler, is connected directly to Chorleywood Distillery. And therefore the independent bottlers can feed through their fresh, emptied, prepared casks to put the new make spirit in that's being produced at their distilleries. It's going to give them differences in flavour. I mean, if you take, for example, half a dozen Caol Ila casks, right? So you've bottled half a dozen Caol Ilas in a small batch for your independent bottling. So you've got these fresh, wet ex-Caol Ila casks, fresh as a daisy. They're not even sitting a week before you refill them with the new make spirit from your distillery, whether it be Chorleywood, whether it be Ardnamurchan, or whether it be Dornoch. And then you have a new incarnation. You have in your warehouses this slightly peated single malt whisky. Is it a blended malt because you've used ex-whisky casks, fresh emptied whisky casks? No. When a cask is considered empty, it doesn't matter what whiskey's been in it. It's the new make spirit that goes in that dictates the status of what's in the cask, which will remain single malt. Just to clarify that. That's important to know. So there we are. I'm just giving you a little bit of insight here as a whiskey buyer, so that when you're looking at what's in the market in the future, you can start to understand the background forensic intelligence that we start to incorporate as we gain experience as whiskey drinkers, which is going to enrich, enhance and empower us in our purchasing decisions. And there you have it. I'm Ralphie here in the Bothy. Hope you enjoyed this extras. I'm going away now, put the kettle on, have a cup of tea and finish this rather lovely glass of Chorivake, which I reviewed in Ralphie Review 1017. Okay. It's lovely to see you, as always. You take care of yourself. Enjoy your moments. And by the way, be responsible. Don't just get pissed for the sake of it, because that's stupid. Just saying.